Standing for the Chairman and Vice Chairman of Council.
Thank you, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Welcome everybody. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Yes.
Apologies from Councillors Hulken, Strachan and Beckett and Dobbin.
Thank you, David.
Apologies from Nick Churchill and Sue Libbins, and I'm going to get the apologies also from Muriel John. She may make it, but then again she may not.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any interest to declare in any of the items? Yes, Councillor.
Chair, I work at the Prince Alexandra Hospital. It's to do with the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I work for the North East London Commissioning Support Unit, which does have some minor dealings with Princess Alexandra Hospital.
Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of October this year. Do you have a matter relating to that? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was in attendance and don't seem to be appearing on the minutes.
Apologies for that, Chairman. We'll make sure that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Not on the one on the internet. Not on the one on the internet. Yes,
The next item is communications from the chairman, which I have several, so please bear with me. Members, I have to report that since last full council I've attended 23 official events, and notable amongst these were hosting the High Sheriff on his visit to Harlow, reopening Pets Corner, attending the Harlow Education Progress Awards, where anyone present at this event will have witnessed how far Harlow's schools and young people have progressed in the last 5 years. This is an excellent platform to build a reputation for first-class education across Harlow. I presented the awards at the Harlow Sports Awards, which demonstrated marvellous achievement across the town. I started a lone charity runner on his 85th marathon as part of his quest to run 100 marathons in 100 days. And he still seems very much alive too. I attended a fantastic quiz night organised by council staff towards my charity, Harlow CAB. Unfortunately, the demands of impartiality prevent me from saying who the winning team. I attended a brass band concert in Ware. I opened the new Specsavers in Broadwalk. And I attended the children's ward at Princess Alexandra Hospital to receive £1,000 worth of toys donated by the Harvey Centre. I participated in a vigil for peace organised by Councillor Ian Beckett and the Reverend Martin Harris. I attended a marvellous rendering of the Hallelujah Chorus by our own Harlow Chorus at Chelmsford Cathedral. I attended the handover of a room full of Christmas gifts donated by the public participating shops and Harlow Council employees to local families staying in refuge accommodation this Christmas. I have to give special thanks to Councillor Stevens for standing in for me at the fireworks display. I know this can be quite demanding, and to our staff for collecting towards my charity, Harlow CAB. The book of condolence in relation to the Paris attack has been sent to the Mayor of Belize. Members, as we approach Christmas and we reflect on the meaning of this, I've been touched by the truly selfless and special contribution of our council staff to the Christmas spirit across the town, especially for those less fortunate. It is humbling to witness this from staff who have endured change, uncertainty, increasing demands and decreasing reward, yet remain dedicated to serving our residents. On my own behalf and on yours, I thank them. A word about the traveller injunction. Yesterday, the High Court granted a district-wide injunction banning travellers from setting up unauthorised encampments in Harlow until June 2017. Tremendous teamwork between all parties involved, including the Council's legal team and community safety team, has been demonstrated. I now bring to a conclusion my remarks with the sad duty to report the death of a long-serving member of this council who will be remembered by many members present tonight. And I understand somebody...
I've been asked to make just a short point. Martin often told the story that he was actually on a CND march in the 50s when the former chair of the council, John Moore, who's no longer with us, told him what a wonderful place Harlow was. So he came to Harlow, deliberately got his job at STL, and was one of the town pioneers, and actually a towering leader during the 60s and the 70s. Believe it or not, Martin initially started as the chair of the entertainment committee before my time. He was instrumental in actually setting up things like the town show. The things we remember fondly, although we don't really do as well as we used to, the concerts in the town park. Really, he was the major political instigator of the Playhouse, and we're inclined to actually remember that as well. And he was able to actually eventually become leader in the 70s, when in fact the Development Corporation was wound up. He was a member of the Development Corporation during that time and managed the transition. And Harlow then started to actually take over, and they were the heady days when we even built 100 houses a year. He retired from the council but continued to play an important part in public life in Harlow. And in particular, he chaired the health centre's trust so well. Places like Keith's House and Nuffield House and so on, all the changes that have been seen in the town, very much under his leadership. And he was very active in things like the Gibbard Garden, the St Clair's Hospice, and the Woodcraft Folk. He never forgot his socialist ideals, and at the very end he was extremely pleased to see that we got elected somebody as the national leader, very much similar persuasion to his good self. So it's with a great loss, really. His funeral is on the 29th of December at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, can I ask you to stand for a minute's silence? Thank you, members. Now return to the agenda for petitions.
Lord Chairman.
Questions from the public.
Yes. So my question is to Tony Durkin. It is, what are the council doing to ensure that the square will continue to exist in new premises in 2016?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Emma, can I thank you very much for your question and also for your support and motivation on social media, keeping this very important issue alive. The response is as outlined in the written one, and I'll read it if you want me to, which is the Council shares residents' concerns about the town losing such an important community facility, and that there is no doubt that the square makes a tremendous contribution to Harlow and live music in the region. Since February 2014, the Council have been actively working with the Square to consider a number of buildings, both owned by the Council but also in the private sector, where they may or might relocate. This has included buildings in the town centre, the Latin Bush Centre, the town park and even on the hospital site. The Council also put forward a proposal for the Square to relocate to the Playhouse and we carried out independent studies to see how this could work. The Playhouse and the Square equally make a huge contribution to life in Harlow and help attract visitors to the town, and in the same location could have provided an even better live entertainment venue for everyone in one place. Whilst there were many different reasons, the Square did not find any of these suitable, and I understand that the Square is actively considering a potential venue in the town centre with a private landlord. The Council have advised the Square to produce a business plan covering the costs and timescales for the transition to a new venue and its long-term sustainability. The Council has also advised that it should consider changing its company structure, possibly to a social enterprise rather than a private company, so that this can attract external funding and help towards establishing a new community venture. The Council has offered to help produce a business plan for the Square. Once this is in place, we will explore if the Council could provide additional support for a new community-based venture consistent with the Council's objectives around youth provision, community engagement and of course town centre regeneration. The Council would also encourage such a venture to seek ongoing funding from private, voluntary and public sector sources to support education, art and youth provision objectives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, do you have a supplementary question?
I do.
Thank you very much.
The land which has been sold to Circle Housing was assigned as a community resource in the Harlow local plan and should be protected by the planning policy L3. Is it right that public land has been sold for a different purpose?
In relation to Circle Anglia, yes, the land and the buildings have been taken over by Circle Anglia and they are the landlords of the Square. However, when they bring forward their planning application, which I believe is due in February, part of the criteria will be to meet and match the local plan, and therefore specifications of community resources will be part of that process. However, that community resource does not have to be a rock venue or a music venue. It may well be something that is appropriate for that community at that particular time.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
That brings us to questions from councillors. I have Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the full council on Thursday the 24th of September 2015, when the council passed the motion on a refugee crisis, which said, Harlow Council commits to playing its part to help and support refugees from conflict zones who arrive in the town and recognise that they have a right to be safe from persecution and become part of our community. How many Syrian refugees has the council housed?
Councillor Clement.
The council motion on the 24th of September set out how Harlow Council commits to playing its part to help and support refugees from conflict zones who arrive in the town and recognise that they have the right to be safe from persecution and become part of the community. It also called on the government to recognise the humanitarian need and to make available the appropriate funding and resources to provide a safe haven. The Home Office have now confirmed the funding secured through the recent spending review and have advised that years 2 to 5 funding will be allocated on a tariff basis over 4 years. A notification of this to the Council was received from the Home Office on the 27th of November 2015. Harlow Council, along with other Essex councils, is working with Essex County Council, who is establishing a rolling quarterly programme to rehouse Syrian refugees throughout Essex. The proposal is to house 4 or 5 families at a time in a council area. It is likely that 1 or 2 councils will assist each quarter, with the councils assisting in quarter 1 of 2016 having already been identified. It's likely that Harlow Council will be asked to assist from quarter 2 2016 onwards. In readiness for this, the council is working with the voluntary services and churches to establish the networks that are already available in the town to enable a cohesive support network to be provided. The council is also identifying other agencies that could be involved, such as the Department of Work and Pensions. The intended approach is to have a named person within each organisation who will be able to either support or signpost to others who can provide the necessary support. It is intended that Harlow Council, Rainbow Services and the Church will each have a link officer to enable a joint approach in Harlow. Harlow Council will be compiling the contact information and will make contact with those organisations that have not already offered to provide support but may be in a good position to do so. In addition to the above, the Council has identified a lead officer who will be assessing the suitability of accommodation for Syrian refugees and ensuring that it is available at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Do you have it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. That's a very full answer from the Leader of the Council, Mr. Chairman, but my concern is that the government will only be accepting permanent allocations from councils, and I'm aware that Harlow Council have only offered temporary. So my question is, if we've only offering temporary, that seems to suggest that we will not be taking any refugees in Harlow.
I'm sure Councillor Johnson that the Harlow Council absolutely will play its part in supporting Syrian refugees. As I said in my initial answer to your question, the funding stream was only identified 2 or 3 weeks ago from the Home Office. But we are absolutely looking very closely at the County Council and we will provide, probably through the private sector, but not necessarily on a temporary basis, appropriate accommodation as part of the Essex-wide programme.
Do you have a question?
Thank you, Jay. At last week's Cabinet, in answer to questions over the governance of the local authority trading company, agenda item 11, the leader said there were no specific plans to establish additional LATCs. By implication, there are some plans to create further companies. In order to provide further transparency over the government's arrangements, can you provide examples of the functions of those companies?
As already stated, there are no specific plans to create additional LATCs. The creation of LATCs is now seen increasingly by many councils as an innovative approach to address the significant reductions in government funding. The creation of a parent group structure will provide the flexibility in the future should the council determine to create other LATCs, and not to do so now would create a risk of further unnecessary expenditure and time at a later date.
Thank you, Jay. If you have no plans for additional companies at the moment, why is a Labour Council wasting thousands of pounds on advice for a tax avoidance scheme, which may or may not be called one, as described in paragraph 4 of the Cabinet paper?
I'll just repeat, this is providing flexibility so we can have an innovative approach to how we can fund additional services potentially in the future. If and when such plans come about, they will clearly be discussed in full at Cabinet and if necessary at full Council.
Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 8, motions from councillors. Motion at 8A refers to Princess Alexandra Hospital. Is somebody going to put the motion? Yeah.
Chair, it is quite clear Princess Alexandra Hospital has some significant issues. I'm just going to go through a few of these, all of which are in the public domain, and indeed were articulated in an article in the Harlow Star last month. The Chief Executive told the Trust's October board meeting that the organisation was at a critical juncture and could not deliver what was being asked of it without making some very difficult decisions. At the end of September, the Trust had a deficit of just over £20 million, some £4.6 million worse than planned, and it's forecast to have a deficit of £30 to £35 million for the year. This is likely to get significantly worse over the coming years. The Trust only saw 81.5% of patients within 4 hours during August, significantly exceeding its targets, and is in the bottom 10 units nationally against the 4-hour target. It's worth noting, though, that when measuring attendances per bed, PAH is the busiest A&E department in England, with a significant proportion of admissions coming from East Herts as well as in the West Essex area. The Trust Chairman, Douglas Smallwood, said, "It's recognised by the board, funders and regulators that PAH is not financially viable and is becoming unviable clinically, and that many of the causes are beyond our control." Now, in one way, PAH is not unique. There are many hospital trusts across the country that have significant issues, particularly in Essex. In Essex, an NHS success regime was put in place to provide the support and advice of hospitals. Harlow, the Southern Hospital in Harlow, was excluded from that programme. Now, I've written along with the region of East Herts, Huttlesford and Epping Forest to ask that that decision be reconsidered to make sure that PAH gets the appropriate resources it needs. I've talked a little bit about some of the issues, but although PAH is not unique, it does have some specific and special issues. One of the key issues in PAH is around staffing, and the Chief Executive has said that agency staff is a significant contributor to the financial issues it has. But Harlow, with its close proximity to London, finds it difficult to attract and retain staff. There are also very specific issues with the infrastructure of the hospital itself. It's on a very tight site with ageing infrastructure, and I think it's the view of the Trust that it's not sustainable in its current form or its current location, certainly in the medium to long term. So what this motion is about really is getting some support and consensus from this council. And I also note that the councils of Broxbourne, Epping Forest, Huttlesford and East Herts have put similar motions at my request to their councils to get the attention that PAH desperately needs. It has some significant issues now, but there is significant growth projected in West Essex and in East Herts, both going from Harlow, but in terms of jobs and homes. And so, if there are significant issues now, it's going to get significantly worse. So this motion is about getting elected members across the sub-region of West Essex and East Herts to call on the government and other agencies, and NHS England and others, to give PAH the focus it needs to yes, address funding issues, but also to look at broader structural issues. I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's some debate in the chamber.
Move an amendment, details of which should be in front of members and has been previously notified both the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council. The amendment reads to add 3 and further urges West Essex CCG to reconsider its position on the implementation of RTT fines for this financial year, and further urges the CCG to reconsider reinvestment of fines monies directly into PAH services. Happy to talk to that if it's appropriate, but if not, happy to.
Is that amendment seconded?
Agreed.
Who else wishes to speak?
Can I then speak on behalf of the main motion, Mr. Chairman? In fact, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that the mover of the motion is willing to accept that, and we don't need to go to a debate on the amendment, which I think is helpful. And I think it also shows the spirit in which I know the leader of the council has moved this motion. He's already talked about working with other councils across the region, and I know that there are a number of MPs from across the region as well who are lobbying on the same behalf. The most recent board report from Princess Alexandra Hospital notes the great support that it has had from both councils and MPs across the region. And I think this is an issue that transcends party politics, Mr. Chairman. This is about Harlow's Hospital being the very best it can be, and it's on hard times at the moment. And I've got very fond memories of the hospital, Mr. Chairman, because it gave me my very first job in the health service. Now, I've moved out of the area work-wise and working in London now. But Princess Alexandra Hospital still holds a very close part in my heart. And I think that's because we're all service users here. Ourselves and our family members and our friends. It's the hospital that they all use. And that's why we want it to be the very best it can be. And Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons I've moved the amendment tonight is the motion speaks very eloquently about the things that the hospital needs to address, some of the things the government needs to address and the councils need to address. But I don't think that ring is held quite as much by the lead commissioners, the CCGs, West Essex CCG in particular. There have been some substantive disagreements this year between the Trust and the CCG, particularly with regard to RTT penalties and fines. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to understand what a referral to treatment time target is. It's the 18-week target, it's the government's target. But there is a very specific issue at Princess Alexandra Hospital. When treatment time targets were brought in, it took healthcare from an old episodic-based periods of care into a pathway period of care, pathway treatments. And sadly, the patient administration system that Princess Alexandra Hospital had at the time wasn't sufficient to cope with pathways. And therefore, there's an awful lot of RTT failures going on at the moment. The Trust Board at Princess Alexandra itself recognises is not down to poor care, but down to the poor implementation of the previous computer system. And indeed, the struggles that they've had implementing the brand new computer system. And I know there are members of this who work within the hospital and will know exactly what I'm talking about. Under a PBR contract, the CCG as the Commissioner holds the right to levy fines and penalties for missing targets up to 2.5% of the total contract value. And West Essex CCG are keen to do this. Now that is not the attitude of a friend and someone trying to help the hospital out of their mire. That is the attitude of a CCG that seems to be interested in its own bottom line rather than the bottom line of the hospital. And so that's why I've moved the amendment tonight, Mr. Chairman, to urge the CCG to play their part. The Trust Board has been calling for a number of months now for the CCG to reconsider its position on the implementation of fines and penalties. And I think political weight added to that conversation may indeed tip the CCG into having a deeper conversation about how they can further help the Trust. That being said, it's not just the CCG's problem. There is the whole issue of the Trust itself. 50% of registered general nursing posts at this moment in time are vacant within the hospital. 1 in 5 consultant posts are vacant. Now this speaks to, I have to say, this speaks to some poor management at the hospital over previous years. And I know the new chairman and the new chief executive have not been there all that long and they've inherited a situation. But the situation of 50% of nursing posts being vacant isn't just driven by what the leader said about London being down the road. There have been plenty of nurses who lived in Harlow before, and there are still plenty of nurses who live in Harlow who don't want to work there for other reasons. And I think Princess Alexandra Hospital needs to take a long and very critical look at its management and staffing structure, which I know it is starting to do. There are further problems. They're not claiming as much income as a trust as they could be. Under a PBR contract, you bill for the amount of work that you do, but their coding, their clinical coding, they've acknowledged themselves in their trust board is not of sufficient depth, both for clinical governance reasons, but also to capture that maximum amount of money in from the commissioners. So I think Princess Alexandra Hospital need to look at themselves and work with their partners to make themselves better. And finally, I come on to the government and NHS Essex. I've been in quite detailed correspondence and conversations with our MP, and I know he's written to Jeremy Hunt on a number of occasions requesting that the Minister for State come down to Harlow and meet with the Chief Executive and himself and other interested parties to show just how many people are behind the hospital and explain some of the very specific problems that affect Princess Alexandra Hospital. It's a sad thing that NHS England are not really helping the situation with the way they have run the NHS Essex success regime, the fact that Princess Alexandra Hospital was removed from the success regime without even speaking to the MP of the local area. He had to find out second hand from someone else that NHS Essex had done that. That's not acceptable. It's also not acceptable the amount of money that NHS Essex are spending on consultants to drive the process of the success regime. We've had very many conversations in this chamber about the use of consultants. I object to it totally in the health service, buying in expensive consultancies, when there is the knowledge base and there is the skill base within the NHS to provide solutions to these problems. Mr. Chairman, I welcome the motion from the Leader of the Council. I welcome the fact that it's receiving cross-party support in the region, and I hope tonight, given what I've said, it will receive cross-party support in this chamber.
Well, thank you very much. And I just rise to pick up a couple of the particular points and then focus on my portfolio of regeneration and the impact it would have on the wider economy. Andrew Johnson is absolutely right. One of my jobs outside this is that I lecture to third-year student nurses, and I always ask them where are they going to be working, and I'm always so surprised how few choose Princess Alexandra as a destination, even though they've had clinical involvement in that particular area. In fact, I was speaking to a couple of people only a couple of months ago who actually were healthcare assistants in the hospital, who have now qualified but are now going to work in the private sector rather than actually coming back. So Councillor Johnson is absolutely right. There is a fundamental issue about this. I have to say, personally and professionally, I'm actually supportive that Princess Alexandra was taken out of the success regime, because clearly it's not successful. And actually it is right that we do pause for thought and actually understand what the essence is and what is the business model that they're producing. So I wasn't at all surprised when that particular issue Another issue that Councillor Johnson said, he quotes Harlow Hospital, but actually 40% of all patients and visitors do not come from a postcode either in Harlow or in Essex. They are actually from Hertfordshire. So we have got to understand that the dynamics and the movement of patients around choice and opportunity has changed. Which then moves me on to my issue as the portfolio for regeneration. We know that Princess Alexandra is the largest employer of local people in this area at the present time. So any challenges or any changes to that will have a direct and immediate impact in our local social economic area. We also know that Princess Alexandra provides the highest flow of visitors, either visitors to the hospitals or patients themselves, and that they also help with the economy of Harlow by actually either using our excellent parking facilities or hopefully encouraging them to come to our potentially excellent town centre. But there is some simple truths, and Councillor Clampner does refer to them. We have to be honest that actually the Princess Alexandra site is full. We know that as local councillors because we get inundated in relation to parking issues, parking challenges and stuff like that. We also know that doing nothing is no longer an option in the health economy. And I actually think we should be brave, and I think we should be honest enough, and if we are talking about regeneration and looking for a legacy for the future, we have to be honest and we have to be challenging about, is that site suitable for the future use of a public health and national health place? And if not, with the economics and the changes that are happening, should we be brave enough to actually be saying that actually part of the solution is to actually look at the infrastructure, the business, but also the building, and whether or not that should be found somewhere else. And to do that, that also means that we have to make a very brave jump, which is basically saying that that may not be within the current boundaries of Harlow as we know it at the present time. But I do think we're in challenging times, but I am grateful that the CEO is working with our CEO and other people to have an open and honest debate. And actually Andrew Johnson is completely right. This is beyond politics. This is about our service, our beliefs and our principles about the National Health Service, but it's about supporting our community. Because if we don't, from a personal level, tomorrow one of us may need that service. So there is an investment to make sure it works for the benefit of all. So I do welcome the cross-party support on this issue. Thank you.
Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to echo the comments already levelled up this evening about the collaboration across not just Essex but Hertfordshire, where a number of patients do visit Princess Alexandra Hospital. I also wanted to restate a principle that we all agree with in this House, that the NHS is at the point, should be free at the point of use, and we all in this chamber agree with that principle, and that's the bedrock of the NHS. The NHS is a preserve of everyone in the community, irrespective of politics, and that's why it's important to have a consensus on this matter. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the staff at Princess Alexandra Hospital. Of course, we need to talk about the financial issues that it faces. And I may not agree with some of the health professionals in this chamber, but I respect them fully for the work that they do for the NHS, and that should be an important principle that we all hold true in this chamber. I think it is quite wrong of the NHS Essex success regime to exclude, for whatever reason, Princess Alexandra Hospital Trust from discussions. And I know that our Member of Parliament is in correspondence, locked in correspondence, as Andrew has said, with the Secretary of State for Health, asking for an urgent meeting with the Chief Executive to resolve this matter urgently. There are lots of financial issues that have been borne out in the debate, and I want to go over a few as well. I think it's important, though, although there are financial challenges in our trust, to recognise some of the pioneering work that it does. Only recently, the pioneering new treatment that they're investing in terms of prostate cancer treatment. Fantastic that PH is leading the way, and it's just recently been filmed by ITV for that work. Also, the fact that they're reducing the amounts of complaints that are coming into the trust, working hard to address patients' concerns on those matters. And one big issue that I've always cared about is infection control. And actually, PH is leading the way nationally in dealing with C. difficile, which is a persistent problem in all hospitals, but not in PAH because of the measures they put in place to tackle those matters. I also want to pay tribute to the staff in terms of, okay, there was a lot of concern in the Care Quality Commission inspection, but there were lots of good, positive things about the staff, in particular caring. And I want to quote the specific mention of the local NHS staff, and they say about the staff that staff were compassionate and ensured that patients' dignity and privacy was respected. And that's something of a credit for our town. Equally on maternity, CQC say the outcomes for women in the maternity service were outstanding and comparable with units in the top quartile of all English trusts. We should praise our local trust for the work it does in those specific areas. But there are financial concerns, and one thing that shocks me about our trust is the amount of money that we lose through missed hospital appointments. Last year alone, it was $250,000. I mean, that is unbelievable. This is a problem for all trusts across England, and something that I find shocking and adds to the deficit that our current trust faces itself in. One of the things that is important, though, is government investment, and I read in the Telegraph only today that the Secretary of State is looking at a £1.8 billion transformation fund that is there in place, and I quote, to draw up robust, for trusts that draw up robust financial recovery plans if they are facing a deficit. So there are measures in place in terms of funding provision that the government are putting in place. And of course, the government also followed the recommendation that was set out by the NHS Chief Executive, Stevens, in terms of front-loading £8 billion in terms of investment in the NHS. We obviously need to see more of that in Harlow, and I know that our MP and all councils in this region, the 250,000 patients that are provided by the Trust, are on side. I think the comments by the spoke leader or the cabinet member for regeneration are quite right. We need to be bold about health infrastructure in Harlow. And so that's why I very much support the principles that have been set out by the administration. We have an ageing population in this town. We've got to recognise that health has to innovate, become better at dealing with those concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Danvers, I think.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to remind ourselves of a number of things that have actually got us into this situation. 5 years ago, we actually had a dreadful reorganisation that cost £3 billion. Andrew Langsley was probably one of the few people that understood it. In fact, it was said that only 3 people understood it. One had gone mad, one had died, and Andrew Langsley now goes to the House of Lords. The chickies are coming home to roost in regards to how badly our National Health Service is financed. The government continually talk about £20 billion of efficiency savings. What have they done? They've cut it down really to £12 billion of so-called efficiency savings because they've taken the bill down a bit. They pretend they're putting money in when they're still actually taking the money out. It's a convoluted system of different contracts and funding. The Leader of the Opposition talks about he's appalled at consultants. It's the system that his own government set up, and it's the system that Halfon voted for 5 years ago to actually implement this convoluted nonsense of financing a decent hospital. What Harlow Hospital lacks, there's nothing wrong with the staff of the hospital, there's nothing wrong with the treatment of the hospital. What it lacks is proper funding and acknowledgement of its actual special position, as John spelled out, in terms of actually retaining staff because of the competition from London and of getting these people from a very wide catchment area which isn't always actually properly funded. These ideas of the CCG and so on, and people actually bidding for contracts and so on, the money that actually is wasted in actually the administration of this is just absolutely crazy. We need a decent funded hospital, and we need to go back to basics, Chairperson.
Councillor Toll.
Thank you, Chair. I think Prince Alexander is something that is so close to many of our hearts. It was a hospital I was born at. It was a hospital that helped when I got an orange pit stuck in my ear as a child. It helped me later in life. It helped a family member when they had difficult times of miscarriage. It's helped my mum when her back went out and she was unable to walk, and then provided treatment quickly. And in more recent months, providing support when my nana unfortunately suffers dementia, overdosed on her medicine, and provided support, kept her in for the period that she needed, and enabled us to get the support in place for her to go back to her own home and live independently. It is so important to all of us, and we know it's under pressure. But I think when we look at many of the pressures, there is many things that we need to do locally. There's many things we need to look at in doing with our cares. Doing one of the biggest things that affects the NHS in West Essex across the country is falls, and looking at how we can prevent these things as a local authority, how we can work with social services, how we can work with Essex County Council to prevent and educate on some of these simple things that we can do. And that is part of some of the stuff the council are doing at the moment within our Keep Safe scheme and many others. But we do have to remember that yes, Prince Alexander is a sexual case, but the NHS is in crisis. It's in crisis because of over £1 million top-down restructure that no one wanted, no one voted for. There's A&Es closing across Essex, across the UK, and there's walk-in centres closing, which are preventative. So it can't be a surprise to our MP who voted for these measures when this happened. We've been saying what would happen. We've been saying if we take these measures, that needs proper funding, and actually, yes, you can invest money, but unless you invest it well, and I really hope that the government schemes come forward, I really welcome more funding, but I hope that it's looked at properly and it's not wasted on restructures and billions wasted on redundancies, as it was in the past Parliament. I think until we address these issues and give the NHS the proper support it needs, we will lose staff. We've got a nursing crisis, but we soon may well have a junior doctor crisis if the government goes ahead with its proposals. And these are all issues we do need to look at. We need to keep our staff in the NHS across the country, in particular in Prince Alexander, where there is a real need. And I hope that our MP will go ahead and address this, do it in a real way in Parliament, not just talk about it locally when he's already voted for the restructure and the budgets and things that affect it in Parliament. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say I am completely ignorant on the way the NHS is funded, the various opinions and counter-opinions that are expressed really, I'm a novice to it. But I've listened to what I consider to be expert opinions from Councillor Andrew Johnson, Councillor Klempner and Councillor Durkin, who spoke articulately on the matter and whose points of view I found interesting to listen to and were, as they stated, non-party political. So I would like to urge, if we can move on to possibly the vote, because I think those three people were getting cross-party consensus. They did seem informed about what they were talking about, and they were very interesting to listen to. I'm worried that we are starting to verge away from the motion, and we're starting to talk about party political issues, which I thought wasn't really what this was all about. I thought this was about us trying to protect a very valued service, and we listen to experts in the room on that, not people just speaking for the sake of it. Thank you.
Are you moving the proposition that we move to the vote?
I am indeed, actually.
Is there anybody else who wants to
Does
speak?
anybody want to speak against that?
I reserve my right to speak as secretary, Chair.
Do you have any more on the list, Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief, because actually, like Councillor Perrin, I'm not an expert on the NHS. I don't confess to work with the NHS. I have no experience of working in the NHS. But I do know that Princess Alexandra Hospital provided me with two of the greatest moments of my life quite a few years ago. And but seriously, now, we all speak about what we do or do not know about Princess Alexandra Hospital. We do speak about what we do or do not know about funding for the hospital. But what we've actually got to remember is actually how important the hospital is in this town, and not just to people in this. Because many people may say, why is a council debating the hospital? Surely it's up to MPs or it's up to the CGG to debate the hospital. Actually, as a major stakeholder in this town, we should be voicing our concerns and our opinion. It's important that is added to all that debate. If we are concerned about what's happening at Princess Alexandra Hospital, can we imagine how the residents of this town, and as other people said, wider areas across East Hertfordshire, wider areas of West Essex, can we imagine how they felt on November 7th to read the headline from the Chief Executive of Princess Alexandra Hospital that the hospital is not sustainable? That is a massive concern, not only to people in this room, it's a massive concern to everyone that we represent, and it's up to us to push that issue. I won't go into great political debate about who's at fault for funding or not, but you actually read bullet point 1, one of the things actually that we are agreeing tonight, the first sentence, urgently addresses a significant funding issue. So there is issues down there with funding. I'm not going to go into a debate about who's to blame for what we need to do is make sure that we resolve the issues. I formally second the motion, Chair.
Well said.
I'm going to look for a vote now on whether or not we move to the vote. Who's in favour, please? Sorry.
Procedurally, we need a seconder to Councillor Perrin's motion.
Thank you.
Then put it to the vote.
Right, so I'll move to the vote now on whether or not we move to the vote. Those in favour?
Yeah, here, in favour. Yeah.
Thank you. We move to the vote. Those in favour?
Sorry, Chairman, to interrupt again. Having decided that, Councillor Klempner could come back and have a final say.
Thank you. Councillor Klempner.
I will keep this very brief. Look, there are clearly deep differences of opinion on NHS policy and what have you. But I really want to focus on what there is agreement on here, is that Princess Alexandra Hospital is a vital resource for the health of this sub-region, a major employer, and a vital part of the infrastructure in supporting the growth of Harlow and West Essex. I think we can all be agreed on that It is important that there is consensus. I am grateful to the leaders of Ottlesford, Epping Forest, East Hearts in particular, because I've had a number of conversations, and these don't stray into party politics, but they are about recognising the vital importance. One final point I'll just make briefly about a new hospital structure and what have you. I'm not fixated that it has to be in the district boundary of Harlow District Council. However, we have to recognise that Harlow is recognised across this region as a centre for the growth of jobs, homes and what have you. That it is the centre of a wider health system, both in West Essex and in these parts. I'm sure there are lots of other options. It will be an expensive option, but that needs properly funding. But it is clear from public statements that the Chief Executive and the Chair of the Trust have made that the current hospital, in its current location, with its current structure, is not sustainable. And we have to be bold and support getting the right solutions for both Harlow and my region. I will leave it there.
Thank you. So we can move to the vote now on the motion as amended. Those for the motion? Do we have any against? No? That's unanimous then. Thank you very much. Moving to the next motion on crossroads. Who's going to put that? Councillor Johnson on crossroads. Who's going to put that? Councillor Johnson?
Yes, I'd like to propose that, Mr. Chairman.
And Councillor Charles, you're seconding?
I'd like to second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Who wishes to speak first? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, a number of members of the Chamber and indeed a number of members of the public may be asking, what is Crossrail 2? It's not been very well publicised in the Harlow area, and that's because currently the plan for it is to end at Broxbourne. Crossrail 2 is a new railway service serving London and the wider South East, due to open by 2030, that's going to connect stations as far down as Surrey into central London with a new underground system running through from Wimbledon up to Tottenham Hale, and then the train service onwards from Tottenham Hale up to Broxbourne, Cheshunt and Broxbourne. Those regions, or those areas, Broxbourne and nearby neighbours, will see about 12 trains an hour in both directions to and from London as a result of Crossrail 2. Now currently, the Liverpool Street line faces absolute severe capacity constraints. It's an absolute capacity and there is no additional service available. And it's forecast that by the time Crossrail comes online, there'll be about a 39% increase on the services required on the Liverpool Street line. As we've already noted in the previous debate, as the leader of the council's mentioned, Harlow's an area for growth, and there's more and more people wanting to live in and around this area. So it makes no sense to me that Crossrail 2, which has been admittedly instigated by the last Labour government, then supported by the last coalition government, and now being processed by a Conservative government, it's won support from all sides of the political arena, because it is going to increase the capacity travelling in and out of London considerably. But it makes no sense to me that Broxbourne down the road should be the end of it, when Harlow's the very next station on the line, and Harlow is, as we've noted in the previous debate, the centre of the London Stansted-Cambridge corridor. It's a growth area. It's in direct connection to Stansted Airport already on the main line. And it seems to me that the people instituting Crossrail 2 are missing a trick. And that's why we brought this motion this evening, Mr. Chairman. I was contacted by some local business owners who'd started a petition on the council's website and were trying to get 650 names to get it debated at full council. And after talking to them, they were very passionate about the idea of bringing Crossrail to Harlow. And the more I learned about it, the more I thought this is an absolute no-brainer for, forget party politics, this is a no-brainer for any resident of the town. Let's bring this whole thing to Harlow. And so I said to the chap, I've got a far better route than you doing a petition on the council's website. I'll propose a motion. So I can't take credit for this motion. It comes from local business owners, and that's why I think as part of the motion we need to get formal submissions from local businesses, from as many partners as possible, to try and put Harlow onto the map in the makers of Crossrail 2's minds, to make sure that we stand a chance of benefiting. I think we currently get something like 4 trains an hour to and from London. Broxbourne's going to, in 2013, going to get 12 trains an hour either way. And I can't bear to see Harlow residents miss out. So that's why I'm bringing this motion this evening, Mr. Chairman. I think it's vitally important that we have a good debate here. I hope that, and from the indications that I've had in some conversations already, I think we'll get some good cross-party support on this motion. And I think we should then make sure that we get as many of our partners in the area, we try and get as many neighbouring councils on board, we try and get as many businesses and community groups on board as possible, and get them all to write into the consultation. Sadly, the consultation has been running for 2 months already, and it ends on the 8th of January, which is only 21 days away. Fortunately, Christmas and New Year are in the middle there, so we don't have much time. And that's why I thought it very important we bring it to this full council, try and get some support, and try and make sure that Harlow doesn't lose out in the region when this new Crossrail 2 development goes ahead. So I'm hopeful members of the Chamber will support this. I hope they'll take it in the spirit in which it's been moved, which is one purely of trying to get the best for Harlow and trying to use a consultation period for that which it's designed, to make sure that people's voices are heard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, I'd just like to propose a very small amendment, well, more of an addition than an amendment. I believe the amendment proposed has been circulated to members. But basically, in the first numbered bullet point, which starts, coordinate an initial response to the consultation, outline the details of this debate and the reasons that Harlow should be included in the scheme, to go on to say and make representations as to the advantages of having the terminal at Harlow.
Mr. Chairman, happy to accept that and move the amendment, so no need for a debate.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do you want to speak now? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just start by saying I'm absolutely supportive of both the intent and intent of this motion. We talked in the last debate about Harlow being recognised as a centre of growth. That's not just in West Essex, but all the way through the London Stansted-Cambridge corridor. We've got substantial jobs growth slated, both in terms of the enterprise zone itself, but also the 2 announcements now around Public Health England centering the National Science Hub in Harlow, which will generate collectively many thousands of jobs, about 7,500 jobs. With that growth, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate infrastructure to support that. We talked about the hospital, there are many others, but clearly transport is one of the key elements of that infrastructure. So for some time now, there's been discussions about a new junction on the M11. We've been talking about forward-tracking the West Anglia line, and this, in terms of making Harlow the terminus point, not just an entry point of Crossrail 2, as Councillor Johnson already noted, will significantly improve the capacity, but also the resilience of transport links into Harlow. Having someone who spent about an hour and a half yesterday morning standing on Harlow station and eventually calling in the troops to take to Epping to get into London for the High Court hearing, I know the significant problems, and these happen on a regular basis actually in this area. My final point is just one of the reasons why I want to just make a slight extension to the motion, which I do absolutely agree with, about making Harlow the terminus point, is Harlow already has some of the prerequisites that they're looking for in terms of terminus Crossrail 2. There's a requirement for sidings, so they can install trains and move them around. We already have around the cement works, and potentially additional land available around that area for Mead Park. We have a 4-platform station. And I think actually there would be a general consensus, not just hopefully in this chamber, but in the region for Harlow being the furthest point. And it will also contribute to many of the other aspirations. It will be very complementary to them forward-tracking the west bit of the West Anglia line. It will increase the case for Harlow not just being a centre of growth, but a sort of multimodal transport hub, and in terms of buses and road infrastructure as well. So I'm hugely supportive of this motion. I hope we can get consensus in this chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Delvin.
Well, Chair, nearly everything I've written down to say, my leader has already said, so therefore the only other thing I would like to add is that we are, as a portfolio for regeneration and enterprise, it's a huge task, it's a huge challenge, it's a very exciting time to be part of a really changing environment. And this, when this first came out, I think all of us were slightly surprised that Harlow hadn't been included, and I do know a lot of people have been campaigning to try to get that voice across, and I know that our leader has been speaking to Broxbourne and others, and I do think a lot of people now do recognise the strong argument that we can make that actually it should end in Harlow because of the points that Councillor Clement has said about we've already got the infrastructure there. But the only other part in relation to the economic progression is Stansted Airport. Whilst Harlow is the hospital is the largest employer here, within the region, Stansted Airport is the largest employer. And the unique range of employment opportunities available to people currently, but actually with this growth and this expectation that is taking place, we have to make sure that people can get in and out safely and securely, and that doesn't just mean passengers, but that means workers. So for us to actually become a hub site that will again attract more business, more economic growth, more regeneration, that will bring about the new generation of new town that we're looking at. Now, whether or not that's going to Harlow or whatever, but it's building on the successful legacy of the new town principles and taking it into another 50 years. So I do agree with Councillor Johnson and Councillor Clement. This is an important issue. We again need to all get around the same flag and actually saying this is good for Harlow. Let's go out and promote that in the best way we possibly can. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'd like to echo the comments across the chamber about the principles of Crossrail 2 and why we need to expand the campaign for Crossrail 2 to come to Harlow. As a commuter, I regularly use our line to get to London Liverpool Street, and I am frustrated by the capacity issues at times. I think when you look at the information that's been published about Crossrail 2, it's incredibly exciting for our corner of England. Just the fact alone in terms of economic regeneration, providing the infrastructure needed to support 200,000 new homes and 200,000 new jobs. This is a real credible plan to accelerate regeneration in our corner of England. I welcome the fact that the business community have lobbied politicians from across the chamber about this important issue, and it's vital that we make a submission to the consultation. I think there's also an important point here about the National Infrastructure Commission that's been recently set up, led by Lord Adonis. I think the fact that he is driving Crossrail 2 I welcome, because irrespective of his politics, he is a man of deep thinking and great knowledge in terms of transport infrastructure and transport policy. So I think that we need to engage with him and talk about the benefits of expanding Crossrail 2 to build on the effective and efficient infrastructure we need for the whole country. I also want to mention the fact that what I don't understand about the consultation and the fact that it's ending at Broxbourne as the terminus point at the moment in the consultation, that they don't realise the other capacity issues on the rest of the line, and as Councillor Durkin has said, the importance of Stansted Airport in this region. We do need shorter journey times, and we do need improved reliability in the service, and this would be a way of achieving that if we could bring the terminus point closer to Harlow. I also believe that this complements the Council's overall regeneration strategy in terms of becoming an important feeder, Crossrail 2 becoming an important transport feeder for the Harlow enterprise zone. It's about jobs, it's about creating proper infrastructure, it's about delivering on a mixed mode proportion of transport infrastructure, roads, transport, and of course the airport just down the road. These are all elements for developing a stronger local regional economy. Also, I want to say just briefly on our regeneration strategy as a whole, we cannot view the principles of regeneration in isolation, and that's why this motion is so important, because we're talking about the necessary, I believe, necessary infrastructure to deliver Harlow as a competitor in the region in the 21st century. We've talked tonight a lot about being bold and being brave and being optimistic about the future, and our regeneration strategy needs to achieve that. And I'm pleased that there's consensus across the Chamber in delivering those principles. We have a short window to capitalise on this major opportunity. We cannot lose sight of that, and we must work together with the business community to bring Crossrail 2 to Harlow.
Thank you, Councillor. Nobody else wishes to speak. We'll move to the vote. Oh, sorry, Andrew, yes, you can sum up.
I will sum up, Mr. Chairman. I'll sum up very briefly and just say thank you for the members that have participated in the debate. I hope that the members that haven't are only doing so because they agree with what's already been said. I think we've proven tonight it is very important to put Harlow on the map and put Harlow on the agenda, and I would very much welcome member support from across the Chamber for this motion.
Thank you. We do move to the vote. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Moving to references from Cabinet and Committees, item 9, which leads to item 9A, the Joint Finance and Performance Report, Quarter 2, and other reports which... Yes, you were going to say.
I was just going to say, Chairman, do you want to take them all together? A, B and C?
Is it agreed that we take those in blocks? Thank you very much indeed. That brings us to item 10, the appointment of a member champion. Is there anybody who's speaking in support of that?
What support we've got to move?
I'd like to move that, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak on it?
Yeah.
Who are we having?
Seconder?
Second.
Oh, yeah.
Councillor Charles.
Chair, I'm frankly shocked and surprised at the nomination for the champion for highways and infrastructure. Given that there is an ongoing standards investigation that has been referred to an external body, and that we have a cabinet member for regeneration paid an allowance to deliver on infrastructure, I oppose this.
Yeah.
Proposed was promoted by the head of governance.
We haven't had a name yet.
Councillor Charles is of course right that there is ongoing investigations, but I don't think this is the forum for that to be discussed this evening. And I would ask members not to deal with that at all this evening.
Are you asking that we do not deal with this matter?
No, dealing with the matter I have no problem with, but actually talking about other issues I think it would be wrong.
I'm concerned that Councillor Charles appears to have something to say in relation to this appointment, and he should be able to bring forward his reasons for that. What is the problem with him doing so?
I think the issue that Councillor Charles wishes to raise is not one which should be raised at this stage in the council chamber.
That would preclude there being a vote on this then?
No, not at all.
Well, the matter needs to be debated.
Yes, I'm happy for it.
I'll carry on. As I was saying, Chair, we already have a cabinet member for regeneration who is tasked with these, what are the most vital and important issues in the town: regeneration, highways and infrastructure. And as we've debated tonight, we've spoken about many issues in terms of health provision infrastructure and of course rail infrastructure for the town. And it needs someone who is a cabinet portfolio holder, charged and paid with that responsibility to execute it. And I have complete and utter faith in the consensus that there is between the cabinet member for regeneration and the spokespersons from either opposition party. That consensus has been there, and I would want that consensus to continue. But I am very concerned that a hatchet will be thrown into that consensus if we go down this path?
Councillor Dec.
Well, first of all, can I thank Councillor Charles for being so kind and worrying about me in relation to this water. So, in the spirit of Christmas, that's lovely. That is lovely. I'm to say this. But as with the previous debate, whilst it is a great and wonderful time to be the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Enterprise, we have to be realistic that actually we do need to be able to put this into project pieces to enable each one to be looked at in consideration in the same way that we have got key officers dealing with these issues. And one of the things that I really wanted to try to do is to actually open up the debate and actually open up the engagement of this. And like the example of the town centre, is the fact is that we've set up a task and finish group that can assist me in looking at what are the challenges and what are the opportunities for the town centre. And this is exactly the same issue, is that because of the need, the specialist need, the expertise that is needed to deal with the infrastructure, isn't it reasonable and appropriate that we actually do identify a champion that is given delegated authority but still accountable and responsible to the Cabinet Member for any particular issues, recommendations, etc. And therefore, on that basis, I welcome the opportunity, and I do think it is a pragmatic and sensible approach.
Debate certain issues which I think are apparent in this chamber that needs to be debated. We've had two very good debates where this chamber has worked together. It's something I've said twice in the speeches I've made, and I think it's good and sends a very strong message to people who need to listen, but also the people who we are here representing, the residents of Harlow. I will not be supporting the individual. I'm not allowed to say any more than that. But there are valid reasons that we need somebody that can be trusted by everybody in this house, in this chamber. And I believe that at the present moment is not the case. I support what Councillor Charles said. I actually support what Councillor Durkin has said, in the sense that it's very important about the regeneration. But I'm sorry that the governance officers made other comments. I will not say any more on this matter.
Point a member champion for highways and infrastructure, and I told him so outside of the chamber. I'll tell him again now tonight. He has, or should have, a very capable portfolio holder for regeneration, as we've already said, and as has been recognised in the last two debates, the Cabinet Member is clearly on top of his brief. That's what he's paid to do. We already pay allowances to members to have specialist interests, to be Cabinet Member portfolio holders, and to speak with authority, as he has done tonight, on their portfolios. There is no need for a deputy by the back door. There is no need for another member to come on, and there is particularly no need, the member's name has not been mentioned yet, the member that was suggested at the pre-meeting does not have, obviously, the confidence of the opposition. I would ask the Leader of the Council to consider where there has been a consensus on regeneration. It's been rocky, it's been bumpy, but again tonight we've managed to get two motions on regeneration of the town centre, regeneration of our town and region, that have been cross-party supported because of the people and the personalities partly involved in that. I fear, as Leader of the Opposition, that should this nomination go ahead tonight, you will no longer get that sort of engagement from the opposition benches because of the personalities and the people involved. And I would ask the Leader of the Council to seriously reconsider his position.
Yes.
Look, this does not change the executive responsibility for the portfolio holder for regeneration enterprise, nor the portfolio holder's responsibility for policy, direction and strategy. However, it is clear that there are a number of issues about parking, buses, infrastructure that could do with some additional focus. And this is about looking at additional operational focus. And I'm not going to get into a debate on the nomination being concerned about a view about the individual, but I am confident in that the individual I am going to nominate does have specific expertise in this area, and will contribute greatly to pushing forward a number of areas that are of great concern to people of Harlow. So apart from the nomination itself, I'm not saying more of this issue.
Chairman, I think we've got to the stage where somebody's got to be nominated.
That should have been done right.
People have talked around the issue with respect. I think now we need a nomination.
So I'd like to nominate Councillor Denny.
Seconding. Delighted to second that nomination.
Oh dear me. He's come to speak again.
In that case, we move to the vote. Those in favour?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move a name vote and call for members to stand with me to support a name vote.
And your name vote is against?
It doesn't have to be.
It's called a name vote.
You poll the members, and there are only 5 standing. You should have paper slips ready. It's always been a tradition to have paper slips ready.
And do it that way. Councillor David Carter.
Against.
Councillor Simon Carter.
Against.
Councillor Joel Charles.
Against.
Councillor Jean Clark.
For.
Councillor John Klempner.
For.
Councillor Karen Klempner.
For.
Councillor Cross.
For.
Councillor Danvers.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Durkin.
For.
Councillor Foreman.
For.
Councillor Hall.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, for reasons that we've not been allowed to debate tonight, very much against.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Against?
Councillor Shona Johnson.
Well, you should have gone into private session if they don't want to debate.
Councillor Jollis.
Against.
Councillor Locke.
Against.
Councillor McCabe.
For.
Councillor Perry.
In the name of freedom of property.
Councillor Pryor.
Against.
Councillor Purton.
For.
Councillor Souter.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Toll.
For.
Councillor Truant.
For.
Councillor Waite.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Definitely for.
Chairman, that was 15 for the nomination and 12 against.
The nomination stands. We move to item 11,
Chairman.
minutes of Cabinet and Committee meetings. Yes.
I would just like to make one comment on what's going on this evening on this issue. That I trust that the members of the opposition to this administration will hold the individual, the champion for infrastructure and highways and infrastructure for 2015-16 totally to account for all his actions.
Moving on, please, to item 11, minutes of Cabinet and Committee meetings.
Agreed.
11A. Are they all agreed?
On everything.
Thank you very much. There is a request from the Chair for all members to enjoy a very happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year, and to join me in the chamber adjacent for mince pies, which are free.